It's March 26th here in Seoul, and I'm Kim Dami. We begin with these stories making the headlines at this hour, starting with the South Korea wildfires. Wildfires that broke out in Uiseong-gun County in Gyeongsang-buk-do Province over the weekend continue to spread to southeastern areas, forcing residents and inmates from nearby prisons to be relocated. At least 18 people have died in less than the last 24 hours. The U.S. believes North Korean leader Kim Jong-un has no interest in negotiating away the North's nuclear and other strategic weapons programs, adding that the regime is ready to stage another nuclear test on a short notice. Ukraine and Russia agreed to stop using military force in the Black Sea, but with Moscow demanding that restrictions on its banks and food and fertilizer exports be lifted for the deal to be effective. We begin with breaking news from the country's southern and southeastern regions, which are suffering from devastating wildfires that started over the weekend. Now, the government announced that the total death toll has now risen to at least 18. For more, we have our Kim Jung-sil on the line. Jung-sil, fill us in.
Tommy, the situation is dire. The wildfires broke out in multiple regions over the weekend and have been difficult to contain due to strong winds fueling the flames. These maps show the areas where wildfires are currently raging across the country. Now, focusing on the wildfires that started in Uiseong-gun County in the central part of the country there, which started on Saturday, the fire has rapidly spread to neighboring counties and cities as shown on the map. The fire has already claimed at least 18 lives, including 14 in Yeongdeok, Yeongyang, Cheongsong, and neighboring Andong City in southeastern Gyeongsang-buk-do Province, as well as 4 firefighting personnel who lost their lives in Sancheon, Gyeongsangnam-do Province. In Andong, the victims include a woman in her 50s found dead after attempting to escape, while her husband was found injured. In Cheongsong, an elderly woman in her 80s with limited mobility was found dead. Additionally, 3 of the 6 victims in Yeongdeok died while fleeing a car from a nursing home. Authorities have reported that most victims died from smoke inhalation. 1 person remains missing in Cheongsong, and authorities have warned that the death toll may rise for those who couldn't escape in time. To emphasize just how critical the situation is, an unprecedented transfer of prison inmates is underway as a precaution against the fire spread. As of Wednesday morning, nearly 3,400 inmates from local prisons, including those in Andong and Cheongsong, are being relocated to safer areas.
Well, Jung-sil, you have to tell us, what is the latest response from authorities and how are they handling the situation on the ground?
Tommy, Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo stressed the importance of proactive evacuations and enhanced surveillance to prevent further wildfire damage, urging agencies to prepare for the worst. Speaking at a disaster control meeting this morning, he announced the highest level wildfire alert and the mobilization of emergency resources to support affected communities. Han's remarks came as the National Fire Agency has elevated its response to the highest emergency level for the first time this year due to this wildfire, mobilizing all available resources. 9 special task forces have been dispatched to the area, but the dry conditions and strong winds make it hard to contain the fires. As the Uiseong fire continued to spread, and there is an increased focus on protecting cultural heritage sites, especially around Andong and the Hawae Village. Hawae Village is a UNESCO World Heritage Site known for its well-preserved traditional architecture and cultural heritage. This follows the complete destruction of Koonsa Temple in Uiseong by the fire the day before. Now, lastly, we are eagerly awaiting the rain that's forecast for later tonight or tomorrow, but the expected amount is small, so it remains uncertain whether it will aid in extinguishing the fire. However, even a small amount of rain could help in these dire circumstances, and authorities are hoping for any relief it may bring. That's all I have for this hour. Back to you, Tammy.
Indeed, Jung-sil, thank you for the update. Now, in other news, the U.S. has once again recognized North Korea's nuclear and missile ambitions, saying the regime is prepared to carry out a nuclear test with no prior warning. Lee Seung-ja has more.
North Korea may be ready to conduct a nuclear test on short notice. That's according to the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, who made the remark while addressing Congress on the 2025 annual threat assessment of the U.S. intelligence community. While assessing security challenges from China, Russia, Iran, North Korea, and others, she stressed that Pyongyang is likely prepared to conduct its seventh nuclear test. She added that the regime continues to flight test ICBMs to demonstrate their increasing capabilities as leverage in future negotiations. Her comments are in line with Seoul's assessment that the North has already completed preparations for another nuclear test. Pyongyang last conducted a nuclear test in 2017. The director also noted that the regime is looking to achieve at least tacit recognition as a nuclear power, as North Korean leader Kim Jong-un pursues stronger strategic and conventional capabilities that can target U.S. forces and allies in the region, as well as the U.S. homeland. She added that through such weapons, North Korea is looking to bolster its leverage and stature. Gabbard said those goals are being supported by a strategic partnership with Russia, which gives the regime greater financial, military, and diplomatic assistance. She also said the deployment of North Korean troops to the Kursk region is providing the regime with authentic war-fighting experience. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
The UN Human Rights Council has adopted the final results of the fourth Universal Periodic Review on North Korea on Tuesday local time. At Tuesday's meeting in Geneva, South Korea expressed regret over North Korea's rejection of nearly half of the 294 recommendations and urged action. South Korea also called for the immediate release of 3 detained missionaries and the resolution of long-standing issues, including abductees and prisoners of war. It also highlighted the impact of North Korea's extreme militarization on human rights. Following the return of South Korea's acting president and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo to office on Monday, the White House confirmed to its commitment to working with Han. The Prime Minister's office here shared a statement on Tuesday that included the first remarks made by the Trump administration on Han's return to office. It said that the U.S. is committed to working with Han and the South Korean government, further expressing confidence in the democratic resilience of South Korea and its people. And as the nation's acting leader, Han is putting the protection of areas of national interest on top of his to-do list to navigate through yet another looming global trade war. Now, to do that, he will be leading a special economic security task force. Our Kim Do-yeon has this report.
In his first cabinet meeting since returning from suspension, Acting President and Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Tuesday acknowledged the challenges facing the nation, from a global trade war sparked by U.S. tariffs to growing pressures on small business owners and the cost of living. He emphasized the need for an all-out effort from everyone, as well as cooperation with the National Assembly amid the fierce standoff between the main rival parties.
Fellow cabinet members, our calling at this moment is to protect the safety of our people, safeguard our national interests amid the ongoing trade war, and swiftly devise solutions to urgent national issues through cooperation with the National Assembly.
He also pledged to leverage his experience, of which he has more than 50 years in public service related to trade and foreign affairs, to protect Korea's interests, especially in the face of what he called a, quote, tariff storm started from the U.S. He called on the members of the cabinet to do the same and to make sure that the citizens can feel the efforts made by the government.
I ask each cabinet member to exercise full authority and responsibility in implementing their respective policies in a timely manner. I also urge you to communicate actively with the public, providing clear and transparent explanations throughout the process and on the outcomes.
This comes as for nearly the past 3 months, South Korea had both its president and prime minister suspended, with the deputy prime minister for finance in control of the government. With the prime minister's comeback as the acting president, the South Korean government can be seen as more stabilized, and a conversation with U.S. President Donald Trump could take place. In fact, he held a meeting that followed the cabinet meeting with ministers related to trade, as his office says that Han was taking on the U.S.-related matters himself. There, the acting president announced a restructuring of the existing external economic issues meeting, which had been chaired by the Deputy Prime Minister for Finance, into the Economic Security Strategy Task Force, which he will personally lead. According to the acting president's office, the move aims to strengthen the government's ability to respond to growing external uncertainties, including the U.S. administration's tariff policies, and to enhance coordination between trade and security issues. 김도현, Arirang News.
Constitutional Court justices continue putting their heads together on Wednesday to make their final call on reinstating or removing President Yoon over his martial law order. If a ruling date isn't out today, the decision could be pushed into April. Let's turn to legal expert An Jung-sung. Good morning.
Good morning.
So we are now looking at April for the ruling to happen. Now, if that is the case, when in April do you think? Which day is highly likely?
Well, it's very difficult to make any predictions at this moment. I think there are two main facts, and two justices will retire on April 18th, Friday, and the KCC usually give at least 2-day advance notice. So put them together, any day between this Friday and April 17th, Thursday is possible. But nowadays, the Friday rule kicks in, means that in previous cases, the court ruling came out on Friday. So there are only 3 Fridays, but this Friday is unlikely since they have a monthly regular session with 40 cases. Therefore, my educated guess is either April 4th or April 11th, Friday.
Sir, but still, we shouldn't rule out the possibility that a ruling date may be announced today on Wednesday, right?
That's correct. As I mentioned, right, this Friday is still on the table if announced within 2 days, right? Thus, we need to wait and see. Just keep in mind that 2 facts, right? The retirement day on April 18th and then the 2-day advance notice. So any day between this Friday and April 17th is still possible.
Well, we have to talk about the court's dismissal of Prime Minister Han Duck-soo on Monday with you. Now, that's made it, some people say, that's made it even more difficult or harder to tell how the ruling for President Yoon will turn out. What do you think? Do you think the dismissal has given out any clue or hint for the upcoming ruling for President Yoon?
It's a very interesting question because I actually spent some time to think about it. But I have 2 observations. First, the 8 justices managed to reach a consensus at least one issue. For example, the Prime Minister violated the Korean constitutional law and other law by failing to appoint 3 justices to KCC in a timely manner. More importantly, the KCC decided not to remove him from his post in spite of his unconstitutional acts. I think this is a big hint that we can get from the case. So it depends on your side. Maybe different interpretation might differ, but there's, I think, big hint to consider.
One of the things I'd like to point out about the court's dismissal of Han's impeachment back on Monday is that the justices were unable to draw unilateral votes on the ruling. Do you think that will be the case for Yoon's ruling as well?
Well, possible, but once again, the KCC do not need consensus on all legal issues at question. Right? So agency needs only one consensus to remove, legally President Yoon from his post. So as they showed in the Prime Minister Han Duck-soo impeachment case, I think they can reach a consensus at least one issue to remove him from the office.
Is that why the justices are yet to give a ruling date? Because they are maybe having a hard time narrowing their opinions or disagreements. Why are they taking this long?
Well, I think that cases have spent some time to build consensus among 8 justices. But technically, I think it might be easier to to do so on a procedural matter. So, for example, if 8 justices can reach an agreement that there was any procedural violation, such as the illegality of the cabinet meeting on December 3rd, it might be much easier for them to make any consensus. But compared to considering the so many issues on the substantive issues.
Indeed. Professor Sura, thank you so much for joining us this morning. We appreciate it as always.
Thank you.
Also, later at 2 p.m. this afternoon, Seoul High Court will give its ruling on the appeal of the main opposition Democratic Party leader Lee Jae-myung regarding his election violation charges. Now, Lee was indicted on charges of making false statements in December 2021 during a media interview where he denied knowing a man involved in a land development scandal in Sangnam. He is also accused of making false claims that South Korea's land ministry pressured him to rezone a research institute site in the Baekhyun-dong area. The ruling comes about 4 months after Lee received a 1-year prison sentence, suspended for 2 years in his first trial. If the appeals court upholds the sentence and the Supreme Court finalizes it, Lee will lose his legislative seat and be barred from running in elections for 10 years. Seoul has strongly condemned Japan's approval of high school textbooks that continue to make unfounded claims over the South Korean islands of Dokdo. In a statement released on Tuesday, South Korea's foreign ministry called on Japan to correct these inaccuracies and uphold its commitment to show sincere remorse over past wartime atrocities. Japan's Ministry of Education has reportedly approved high school textbooks for use starting in 2026. These textbooks are reported to continue pushing Japan's false narrative over South Korea's Dokdo. Now, in the sports news, the South Korea men's national football team were in action in a World Cup qualifier on Tuesday night, but could only manage a 1-1 draw with Jordan at home. Playing in front of a sold-out home crowd at the Swan World Cup Stadium, South Korea got on the scoreboard early thanks to a 5th-minute goal by midfielder Lee Jae-myung. However, the visitors were back on level terms with an equalizer in the 30th minute. Now, the draw means the Taeguk Warriors will have to wait to secure automatic qualification from Group B, which they top with 16 points. 2 games remain in the group, away to Iraq on June 5th, followed by in Kuwait at home on June 10th.
Good morning, I'm Choi Ji-hee, and this is The World Now. Starting with updates on Ukraine and Russia. Although there was no joint statement following the extended talks between the U.S. and Russia and Riyadh, Saudi Arabia on Monday, the two agreed on a few key points, including reducing hostilities between Russia and Ukraine in the Black Sea and banning strikes on energy facilities. The proposed agreement announced on Tuesday focuses on the Black Sea, aiming to ensure safe navigation, eliminate the use of force, and prevent the militarization of commercial vessels in the region. However, the Kremlin has stipulated that its commitment to the ceasefire is contingent upon the lifting of specific Western sanctions affecting its food and fertilizer exports. Russia and the United States have agreed to implement measures to stop attacks on Russian and Ukrainian energy facilities for 30 days. Despite extensive negotiations and expectations, no joint statement has been issued. Israel's parliament has approved the 2025 state budget, a move that solidifies Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu's coalition government. The passage of the budget has led to heated protests. On Tuesday, the Israeli parliament, the Knesset, passed the state budget for 2025 with a vote of 66 to 52. This narrowly met the March 31st deadline, avoiding potential snap elections. However, the budget's passage was met with public dissent. Families of hostages held in Gaza protested outside the parliamentary chamber, displaying photos and signs referencing the hostages captured during the Hamas attack in October 2023. Meanwhile, the Israeli finance minister referred to the budget as a budget of war, emphasizing its focus on national security amid resumed military actions against Hamas in Gaza. Brazil's Supreme Court concluded the first day of proceedings on Tuesday to determine whether former President Jair Bolsonaro and several associates will stand trial on charges including attempting to stage a coup. The session ended without a decision, and deliberations are set to continue. Bolsonaro has been accused of orchestrating a plan to remain in power after his defeat in the 2022 election. Allegations against the former leader include plotting to poison his successor, President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva, and assassinate a Supreme Court justice. Bolsonaro denies the charges, claiming political persecution. Finally, in the UK, 5 neglected lions rescued from war-torn Ukraine have found a new home at the Big Cat Sanctuary in Smarton, Kent. The group includes a male African lion named Rory and lionesses Imani, Lyra, Vanda, and Yuna. Their rescue journey was facilitated by the Wild Animals Rescue Center in Ukraine. After being temporarily cared for in Belgium, the lions arrived at the Lion Rescue Center, a sanctuary established through a fundraising campaign, and officially opened on Tuesday.
Wildfire risks remain a major concern today. The wildfire alert level has now been raised to severe nationwide. And dry weather warnings remain in place in Daegu and Gyeongsang Dokdo province. And advisories cover many of the eastern parts of Korea. And given today's gusty winds, even a tiny spark could quickly turn into a major fire, so we all need to stay extra cautious. At the same time, as the yellow dust particles linger in central parts of Korea, a dust advisory remains in place for the capital region and Chungcheong-Damdo province. But thankfully, conditions should gradually clear up by the afternoon. Then highs could jump 10 to 15 degrees higher than the chilly morning, reaching above 20 degrees in most parts under mostly sunny skies. That much anticipated rain is in the forecast from Jeju and the south coast from the late tonight, spreading nationwide overnight. But the amount will not be that much, with western regions and Jeju seeing more precipitation. And that rain will bring a chill to the country on Friday, and it will stay cooler through early next week.
That brings an end to our morning edition of Arirang News. Arirang News will be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Thanks for watching.